One of the things that we struggle when we're doing engagement photos and wedding shoots and portraits and location portraits, outdoor portraits, natural light portraits is we don't always have a great sky. So he was like, what if you do a session on making skies look awesome? Because a lot of times they don't look awesome and they kill the shot. Just like they can kill the shot for landscape photos, they can certainly kill the shot for a portrait photo. So that's what we're gonna look at. We're gonna look at a bunch of different techniques. I'm gonna show you the things that I use day in and day out, but because of some of the new masking tools that are in Photoshop and in Lightroom, right, it changes the game, and we can do things that we could never do, or things that we could never do easily. So that's what we're gonna look at. Let's get started. All right, the first thing we're gonna look at is take a look at the image we have here. All right, now this is very, very typical where you just kind of have almost a grayish background. It's just kind of a bland, kind of meh background. Now, if this was a landscape photo, the first thing you'd think of is maybe put a neutral density gradient filter over the camera so it darkens the sky and then goes gradually down. And normally I would say, I prefer to get things right in the camera. I like to use Photoshop and Lightroom to finish a photo. I hate to use it for fixing a mistake. But in this case, we're going to replicate that filter, and it's going to cause a problem, and then we're going to use an amazing bit of AI magic to fix the problem. And once you see this, it's going to make you rethink wanting to use a traditional filter because it works so well. All right, let's take a look. So to create like an ND grad kind of look, let's go up here and click on the masking icon. Now we are in Lightroom. If you're using Photoshop, you would do the exact same thing inside of Camera Raw. In fact, Camera Raw is Lightroom's develop module. They are the same sliders that do the same thing using the same math. So let's go. Click on the masking icon, and then we're gonna click on linear gradient. All right, that's the tool we're gonna use. Click at the top of your image and drag down to where almost to the horizon line. Now you can see from the mask it creates, so that red tint shows you this is what's gonna be affected. Our darkening of the sky is going to go right over these folks, but that's okay. Let's just go ahead and do it. Let's go grab the exposure, and we're just going to drag it to the left. Now, in some photos, that will be enough. If your sky's already kind of blue, it's got a nice, reasonable blue tint, you'll be done right there as far as what you have to do. But I have a great trick. I use this one all the time, and I think you'll really find it handy. When you add an ND gradient, with the real filter, you're done. But with Lightroom or with Camera Raw, we can go another step further. We can add blue to the sky. We can just go to the white balance slider and kick some blue into it. So let's do that. Look right here, temp. Go to the left, kick some blue into it, and now the sky's starting to look good, just right there. We still have the same problem that the blue sky is going right over their faces, but we're gonna fix that in a second. But this is one of the big tips. This is a really easy one. We're starting off with the easy stuff. We're gonna get right into it. And so that's make the grad, add the blue. Now, how do we get rid of the issue with the kids? Here's what we do. We're gonna use the AI. So Lightroom and Camera Raw both have a thing called select subject. It recognizes that these are people and it can select them. But what we're going to do is we're going to go, okay, I can click a button and it will select the people for me. How does that help me? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to go to that mask we just created, and if you click on the mask over here in the masks panel, there's a button called subtract. Click on it and up pops a list of the things you can do. We're going to subtract from that gradient. We drew a gradient. We're going to subtract the people. We're going to have it select subject, and it's going to subtract it from the gradient. And watch, when I hit select subject, give it a second, done. It pulls them out of that, it cuts them out of that mask that we made. Now, what's amazing about this is, think about it. If I did this like at a landscape or something, and I put a traditional grad filter, a square one, or what you can use a circular one, but I use a square one. You can't get, even in real life, you can't get it to go behind the people, right? It doesn't go, oh, there's your piece of glass or plexiglass does not go, oh, there's people there, but Lightroom does. Now, I will say this, once you've done that, if they look a little too warm for the background, you can go and add some blue to them. You can go to the select subject, you can select them and add blue to them if you want. But just wanted to kind of introduce this now. You're going to see me use this again and again in the class as it goes on, but I wanted to start there. Now, one of the things that I will often do is simply just darken the sky. Sometimes just darkening the sky is enough to do it, all right? So let's look at a different image. Let's go ahead and grab let Let me grab another shot. Let's get out of this. And let me grab another photo. Oh, before I do that, can I show you something else? Can I give you one more little trick? Let's take what we just did. And so this is not a sky, but I want you to take the same technology we just used. Let's apply it in a different way. Take a look at the image on screen. Here's what we're going to do. We just learned that we can do select subject, right? So if I click select subject, it would select my subject. Look at the hair. Look how it masked the hair. That is really, really something that it does that today. So we mask the hair, but okay, I'm going to undo that. Here's what we're going to do. So she's on a solid gray seamless background. I believe it's called Savage Gray. So I think that's what I used. Anyway, we're going to put a light behind her. I didn't do it in the studio, but I can do it now using these same tools. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go in and I'm going to click on the masking tool and I'm going to add a radial gradient, so a circular one, and put it where you want your background light to be. So that's where I want my background light. Now, of course, if I go to the exposure and I move it, it's going to put it right over her face. Not good. But you just learned the trick. I can cut her out of that circle. Just like I cut it out of the linear gradient, I can just go here and hit subtract, say select her, it pops her out. So what's left? The background. Now, I can light the background and add a background light separately. I can go in and add a gel by just changing the color of the temperature or the tint, and it's doing all the math for you. And look, it's keeping the hair and everything intact. So anyway, that's how we're taking that same concept that we just did on the sky, we're going to apply it to a background. All right, now let's move on to the next photo. Let me get out of this one. All right, so I want to give you another tip that I would do. Now, this is just a really quick one, but on a lot of instances, it works really well. It doesn't work for every photo. In fact, almost none of this works for every photo. That's why we have to have multiple techniques. Okay, take a look at this one. The sky's kind of meh. I want the sky to be richer and bluer. This is a quick way to do it. So in Lightroom or in Camera Raw, your choice, go to the HSL or color panel, right? Now, depending on, for reasons that we were not going to have time to go and unpack today, Lightroom calls things, the exact same features, different things in Camera Raw sometimes than it does in Lightroom. It's called the HSL color. Here, it's called the color mixer in Camera Raw. That's convenient, even though they are the exact same thing, using the same sliders with the same math written by the same person. Okay, go to the HSL color panel. Click on luminance. And all you have to do here is go to the blue channel, go to the blue down here under luminance, and drag to the left and watch the sky. It just kind of brings in some of that rich blue there. Now, if you go too far, you might start to see banding in the sky, so don't go crazy. And that's I guess, the only caveat I would give you. It really depends on the image. Some images you can drag it really far, the sky looks amazing. Sometimes you can only drag it a little way, and if you go too far, you'll start to see the smooth gradations not be as smooth. So crank it down a little bit and just look at it side by side just from doing that one slider. Remember, all we did was go to the HSL slider in Lightroom. That would be the color mixer slider in Camera Raw. Move the blues to your left and your gold. All right, so there's a couple of different things. I do want to mention another thing that I would do. Well, I might actually mention a couple of things that I would do. Let's go to, and let me just get out of that and let's grab another, go to another image. All right, so this next one is a really quick, super easy thing that I would probably do to an image like this, right? So look at the sky behind her. It is that kind of gray, nothing, kind of meh. So one of the first things that I would try is literally just, and this is going to sound bad when I say it, but I'm telling you, I do it on landscape photos a lot. I do it on portraits, and you really don't see anything but good come from it. I lower the highlights to -100. And what that does is it brings detail and dimension back into the clouds in the sky. So a lot of times the clouds don't have much dimension, and plus we're usually, focused on our subject, our exposure set for our subject, and the sky winds up being kind of light. So just go to the basic panel and simply drag the highlight. Now this isn't going to knock you over. This is a multi-step process. But sometimes, depending on the photo, you take the highlights to -100 and you're like, wow, and it's fantastic. Other times you go, that's a good start. So let's take it to -100 and watch the sky. All right, you seeing that? All right, so let's look at side by side. So left and right, before on the left, of course, after on the right. Just moving the highlight, and the image doesn't look a whole lot different. The one thing that you might have to do every once in a while, I think I would do in this case, is go to the shadows and open them up just a tiny bit on her face so it matches the original. There you go. Now, that's one way to do it. Now, let's go to the masking tool. The reason I want to go to the masking tool now is because the masking tool, besides being able to recognize your subject and go, oh, I'm going to select it, oh, that's a person holding a dog, I get that. We can select the sky. It also recognizes the sky in any photo. So you could go over here, hit select sky, and boom, it selects the sky. It also does a nice gradation at the horizon line, so it's not such an abrupt, you don't see a really hard line. And then we can go take the highlights down again and go to -100. But now we are only, look at, you can see it. Now we're only affecting the sky. So that is affecting the sky just 100% right there, just by taking that down to 100%. Now, the other thing that you could do, and this is a thing that I will also do quite a lot, because usually if your sky's too bright, it's just too bright. And all we're doing is pulling back some of that, is you can go to the exposure, which really controls the midtones, and pull that back a little. Let's pull that back a little here and get that sky looking a little better. Now, of course, because your sky is selected, remember, you said select sky, I can go in here and add contrast to the sky. I could make the sky a little more colorful by going to saturation, and just within a few sliders, look where we've come. From the left to the right, and all we did was we moved the highlights down, then we selected the sky, moved the highlights down again, added a little contrast, lowered the exposure, and our sky looks a whole lot better, and our subject looks pretty much the same as they did before. So that's a good one. Another thing that I do is, let me find another, let's go to the next image here. Let me hit done and go to the next image. Another thing that I'll do is I'm going to jump over to Photoshop for this one. Now, I actually could do it here if I want to do it. Let's just do it. Click here, go select sky, and we're going to lower the exposure. There, we don't even have to go to Photoshop. There it is. I might bring up the whites so the clouds don't start looking so gray. I want the sky to be nice and blue. Add a little contrast. And remember, the exposure is now controlling just the sky, and we can get a nice balanced look for it right there. All right, next we'll jump over to Photoshop, and we're going to do some real Photoshop magic. Now, you can jump right from Lightroom to Photoshop. You press the Command E on Mac or Control E on Windows, and it just jumps your photo over there. But let's go ahead and jump over to Photoshop. Let me open up an image there, and we're going to look at we're going to open up a whole nother can of sky stuff. So take a look at our image on screen here, and you might be thinking, well, sky doesn't look that bad. Sky looks actually okay. I agree, but that's not the real sky. That's not the sky that was in the image. Here, let's go over to the layers panel. This is the real sky that was there, which is just kind of a gray meh sky. So the thing is one of the most amazing features in Photoshop, and why we would jump from Lightroom to Photoshop, is for its feature called sky replacement. It uses AI to detect the sky for you, but also then lets you replace the sky with any sky that you want. So here's how it works. Go into the Edit menu, go to Sky Replacement. It pops up this little menu with all these different skies. Now, it comes with sample skies, right? It comes with sample skies, so you can just try different ones, see what looks good. But here's what I would say. Whoops, I didn't want to rename that. I just want to click on it. Okay. So here's what I would say about using their skies. If you use the built-in sample skies, you're going to get called out. Someone's going to go on Instagram and go, hey, that's the sky from Photoshop. Don't use their skies. Use your own skies. Literally, take your camera out, and if you normally shoot portraits with a 70-200 and you're at 150, shoot it at 150. Shoot the skies at the approximate focal length that you're going to use. If you shoot with an 85-1.4 or a 1.8, go out and shoot your skies with that same thing. You want a lens that's the same, but if you want the best look, you want to do that. You want to shoot skies on great days. You want to shoot sunsets. You want to shoot lots of clouds, a little bit of clouds, a little bit of overcast. Make a big folder of them and then import them all into Photoshop. So when you do put a sky there, it's your sky. You're not going to get busted. All right. So these are the ones that come with Photoshop, and they have a good variety of different ones to choose from. And these aren't so particularly awesome for this. And then you can bring in your own skies. I got a bunch of my own skies here. They have some sunsets that are, well, of course, it's got to match the photo, But then I've got, a bunch of my own skies that I've just taken here and there. So you can just try different ones, and when you find the one you like, then you're done. Now, here's one of the things that it does, and this is important to know this. One of the things that it does is to help it blend and look right. If it puts a sunset-y kind of, if you choose a sunset as your background, I don't know if you can tell, but it also puts a little bit of that same color and color wash over her, so it looks realistic. So when you add a reddish kind of color sky, it puts a reddish kind of tone over your subject. So you may want to be able to use select subject to, so here, watch her as I'm changing the different skies, and you can see how it changes her a little bit as well, and especially if you use a very colorful sky. It tries to match the color. So you'll see the color changing on her. And if that's the case, then you can go ahead and click OK. And if you think, well, I don't like how that color looks, you can go and choose, ready? Select subject. Select just her. Press Command J if you're on a Macintosh or Control J on Windows, and you have just her. They hide the background. And then you can move her above the sky. And did you see that? Did you see how it changed? Look, watch. Here's before and after. You see how it, so you're seeing it normally looks really good when you add that sky and it puts that bleed over. But if it doesn't look good, that's how you do it. Select subject, move it to the top of the layer stack, and then it cuts it out. All right, so the key thing is don't use their samples, but use your own and pop them in there. All right, let's look at a different example. we don't have to save that. Let's go over to this shot. All right, shot out in the desert. And of course, the day I went to shoot, the good clouds aren't there. By the way, interesting thing about when you're on location. You're looking forward where your subject is, and you can see there wasn't a cloud in the sky. However, if you turn to the right, oh look, there's a bunch of great clouds over there. There's a bunch of great clouds over there. Look behind me, the clouds are amazing. Look where I'm shooting, nothing. That's just the way it happens. So turn that way and shoot those clouds that are really there with that lens and everything right there while you're there. Shoot those clouds, the ones behind you, so later you can composite them in. Let's just go and just look at again how it's done. Sky replacement, go find some appropriate sunsets. I think I put a bunch of them way down here. Well, you could go with the crazy, actually, it's maybe not so crazy after all. But anyway, go find, I had a nice set down here. Here we go. You can just find different ones. Just go through them, see what works. You might have to use that select subject. But any of these are more interesting than what we just saw a minute ago, right? Any of these would be more interesting than nothing. Well, maybe except for that one. Anyway, you get the idea. Go find a cloud, a situation that looks good for what you're shooting. It's not late enough in the day for that one. All right, so that's just bad. Okay, so that is sky replacement. It actually works really, really well. It's very, very simple. All right, what about a situation like this? So we have used, I think I used a 200 here, background's out of focus. And if I have it select the sky, it'll do it, right? If I have it do sky replacement, and I pick a better sky for back there, it'll do it. I think I want something puffier. Let's go something more like this, or maybe this. All right, what have I got? What do we got here? All right, well, let's go with this one. Here's the problem with it. The problem is when you put it in there, it's not out of focus. All you have to do is do this. You can see the little group of images. There's the blending part where it blends the colors, and there's the actual cloud. You can see it in there. Just go there, go to your filter menu, go to blur, and let's try to match the amount of blur. Oh, that's pretty good. Let's try to match maybe a little bit less. Try to match the amount of blur to the background. So at least you don't have that awful gray background and it looks pretty good. All right, just one or two more things before we wrap up here, because we're just about out of time. But another thing that we'll run into a lot of times, and this is not just for portrait photographers, landscape and travel, and people will want to do this as well. They don't want to sharpen the clouds. So you want to add sharpness to the image. You want to have it really, really sharp, but you don't actually want to sharpen the clouds behind there. You don't want the clouds aren't supposed to look like, so you want to keep them soft. Well, there's a way that you can do that. So let's go to this particular image here, the ski group, and you can see they have nice clouds behind them. Look at their outfits and all the stuff. You want this to be sharp and crisp, but you don't want to sharpen the sky. Here's how you do that. Let's go to camera raw. Same as the develop module in Lightroom. So you would do this in Lightroom if you're a Lightroom user. Let's go to the detail panel. Whoops, I just moved the image. That's nice. Let's go to the detail panel. And let's just crank up the sharpening big time. Really big sharpening, like goes 1.2 and like 115. Like we're cranking on the sharpening, but of course it sharpens the clouds too. Here's what we do. There's a slider called masking, and what that slider allows you to do, if you hold the Option key if you're on a Mac, the Alt key if you're on a Windows PC, and just click on that masking slider, it turns white. And what that's telling you is everything is being sharpened. The entire photo is being sharpened. As you drag that masking slider to the right, anything that turns black is no longer being sharpened. And if you drag it way over, what's left? The sky is no longer being sharpened, and all that's being sharpened is the edges of all the people in front. So that's just a real quick little handy trick if that's what you want to do as far as avoiding sharpening the clouds, but keeping your subjects really nice and sharp in the foreground. All right, last one. We have 2 minutes and 17 seconds. Can we do it? Yes, we can. All right, one of the effects that you'll see a lot of times, especially in commercial photography, you'll see this a lot in product shots and people shots, and it's just a really slick look that's been around forever, but it's a sky trick, all righty? And what it is this. All right, so let's go to this image right here, and you can see we kind of have a wispy sky. We have a fitness runner here. We have a wispy sky. And what I want to do is I want to just affect that sky back there. Well, of course, you can just go up under the Select menu and choose Sky. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, I found it works best if you use a plugin. We're going to add a bleach bypass effect, which is a traditional darkroom effect. We're going to add a bleach bypass, and there are a bunch of different plugins that use it. On1 has it, Luminar has it, the Nik collection has it. Everybody's got a bleach bypass plugin because that was a traditional, very popular technique back in the darkroom. Let's just go up here. I'm going to go ahead and go filter. We're going to use the Nik collection and go to Color Effects Pro. All right, the Nik collection's from DxO. And it's very inexpensive and it's pretty awesome. And I'm going to go, once it opens up here, we're going to go right here to Bleach Bypass right there. Look what it does for the sky. Now, it looks bad on her. The Bleach Bypass thing does not look good on your subject. And that's why I chose Select Sky first. So my subject won't be affected. Click OK, and it applies that on a separate layer to the sky. Give it a second. And now you've got that bleach bypass effect. Now it seems like it's a bit much. So what I would do is then go to the opacity of that layer and lower it just a little bit. There we go. And you've seen that look. So here's the regular sky that was there, and there's that nice bleach bypass. Now I'm going to flatten the image and do one little final finishing move, which is to go back to Camera Raw. And to help unify the photo and make it look like it's all together, one of the things I do is apply a color tint over the whole thing. So click on Browse your profiles, go to the artistic set and choose one that applies a color consistently over the whole image. Now you don't have to just use this particular set. You can go down here to modern and use its as well, or vintage, whatever you want, but find a look that applies over the whole image, and it kind of helps to unify it. Unify by pouring this one color over your sky and over your subject. It helps to unify the whole thing together. Well guys, we have 17 seconds left. I want to thank you so much. I want to thank the folks at B&H for having me, and I wish you a great conference, and we'll see you guys next time.